Well, good afternoon, everyone. I know most of you know who I am. David Haring. I'm the Director of Technology and Standards at Atronix, and we are a system integrator in the logistics world. We have been using Rebol now in our commercial products for about 10 years. And there's a few big things that have happened. It's been 6 years since our last conference, and I just want to kind of go over some of that stuff so you can kind of see where we're at and what we're doing and what we've already done since Montreal. And as you might suspect from this first slide here, there's a little bit of mismatch between our continued use of Atronix and that actual logo on the left over there. We're now part of a global company now, over $1 billion in revenue. We might hit $2 billion by the end of the year. In the last 18 months, yeah, there have been a lot of changes. There's been a lot of good synergy between MHS and Atronix. We're similar companies in a lot of ways, and there wasn't a lot of overlap between our organizations. In fact, MHS was one of our customers before we were acquired. So they're a mechanical engineering company with some controls and software, but not a lot. So we kind of fit in there very well as a controls and software company. So lots of stuff going on, and organizationally, this is probably the biggest thing is we're now Atronix part of MHS. So on the software front, if you remember, or if you go on YouTube and see the talk that I did back in 2013, you'll notice that we had a software product that's called a SCADA, and our HMI, our user interface for a SCADA was part, it was all kind of put together. Well, we've broken that out now into a new product, which we call Zoey, and Zooming Operator Environment. Of course, it's an acronym. We're engineers and we love our acronyms. It's not a recursive acronym though, so it could be much worse. So yeah, if you're interested in Zoey, you can go look on the web, and we got a whole product page there with PDFs and videos. You can also go to the Atronix YouTube channel. We have a whole section on Zoey. Near the top of the playlist for Zoey there are a bunch of sales videos which kind of describe the product a little bit, and then we also have some training videos which we were using internally for our own engineers that we use for training purposes, but we went ahead and published them on YouTube as well. So all that's out there. But just kind of a brief history, not long after the conference, we started design work on Zoey. It was actually, yeah, it was the summer of 13. We started thinking about, where do we want to go with our HMI? I mean, you guys know the Rebol 2 graphics capabilities, and one of the things about Rebol 2 is it has blocking I/O. You can do a lot with Rebol 2 graphics, but when you start having hundreds or thousands of widgets, graphical objects or styles, Rebol 2 or Reb GUI had a different word for it. How do we minimize the blocking of the HMI? If I'm doing a SQL call to pull in a table that, a million records or something, how do you do that without freezing the HMI? Even momentarily, even for 100 milliseconds, it's noticeable if you're trying to do something on the HMI when it's doing a timer task and doing a SQL call. And when you have a whole bunch of these SQL calls, you end up with problems. So one of the things that we liked about Rebol 3, and by the way, Zoey is written in Rebol 3. One of the big selling points of Rebol 3 for us is asynchronous ports, asynchronous I/O. So we're able to do things asynchronously, and it's not going to block the user interface. It can block if there's just too much stuff going on, but not like in Rebol 2, where everything was completely synchronous. So what we do is, most of our work is in conveyor systems. So we'll be mapping out systems that are spanning across a whole facility. But the big thing is, how do you lay out the conveyor graphics, let's say, for a facility and have your overviews and your zoom up detail views and pop-ups for manual control of the conveyors and things like that? How do you do that without having to have, if you just use bitmap graphics, you're going to have all these views and you have to do them over and over again. Well, we thought, what about using vector graphics like AutoCAD does, where, we get AutoCAD drawings from customers and they've already laid out all this conveyor. For customers, I usually describe Zoey like this. It is like Google Maps, but for your facility. And then we can just zoom in and out and get different views of the system very quickly. As you zoom in, you can see field devices, you can see control panels, you can see barcode scanner locations, and you can click on those things and get all the information you need. So you know, the Rebel 2, Rebel 3 draw dialect lets us do that. It's sort of a subset of SVG. So it has, you know, the commands like translate and scale, for example. And those are really the two things that enabled Zoey. So that was our idea for Zoey. That's what we started designing in the summer of 13. And by December, we started writing code. Tim Berenger and I worked on this pretty much full time all the way up till April. And then we showed off a very primitive demo of Zoey at the Modex show in Atlanta. And Modex is the kind of material handling, the big material handling show in Atlanta. The other one being at ProMat in Chicago, so they alternate years. So it's really the only show that Atronix is interested in attending. But we had a booth. This was the second booth we had at Modex, and it was a big deal showing it off. Even as primitive as it was still something that our competitors just were not doing. So we were pretty proud of it. It's 100% written in Rebel. By September, we had a project. We just made the decision, you know what, we're going to use Zoey on this project, and God help us, you know, we're gluttons for punishment sometimes in doing things a little sooner than maybe they should be done. But it was ABC Wine and Spirits was the customer down in Florida, and it wasn't a big system. It was a small system, a great starting point. We weren't biting off too much from an HMI point of view, but it had conveyor graphics, and it had a lot of the things that we would normally have in one of our systems. So we tried that out, and our first deployment was in September of 14. And since then, we've been adding features, you know, typically in the form of new widgets, trying to improve our workflows to help put together our systems more quickly. And I can't believe it. This September, we're celebrating our 5-year anniversary of production deployment. So we're pretty happy about that. So that's Zoey. And that's probably the biggest software thing that we've done in the last 6 years since the last conference. Kind of right behind that is a SCADA, you know, our Atronix SCADA system. And what we've been doing here mainly is, I mean, we've done other modules that are part of our warehouse control system. I'm not really going to go into that because it won't make a whole lot of sense. So we have new modules, new templates, but from a driver point of view, the bigger thing that we've done is we've made some new improvements to our Ethernet IP driver. We have a new Modbus TCP driver, and these are industrial protocols, by the way. You know, typically you'd see these things written in C, at least classically you would. So doing them in Rebel that's our way. All of our device drivers are in Rebel. We have a new Stomp driver. This is an IoT driver. Everybody's heard of IoT. Along with this, we have an MQTT driver. I forgot to put that in there. It's not been deployed into production yet, but we have one kind of waiting in the wings, ready to go. So we've got the IoT side covered with Rebel for the most part. And yeah, so we've been deploying SCADA on the Rebel platform for 10 years as of a few months ago. So we've already passed our 10-year anniversary there. So as you can see, especially for the new folks, we've been doing Rebel-based systems for a while, and the plan is to continue on with that. So that's where we are with the SCADA. There's really, on our short-term list, which is like within the next 12 months, we really only have 4 things here. One is we want to finish implementing SCADA and debugging it. And then 2 things right here are already in RenC, the TLS 1.2 and user natives, which was so wonderfully demonstrated in the last talk. And then finally, and this is the thing that's really killing us right now, as we start to see where the real limitations are, and that's the full duplex ports. Half duplex means you got to stay in that very strict request response cycle. You can't have unsolicited reads or writes, or I'm trying to remember the term for it, but those heartbeats, when they just come whenever they come outside of a request response, mostly it works, but every once in a while you get the timing on it and that heartbeat comes at the wrong time, and then we've got a problem on our side. It's really probably the most important thing that we need in Rebel is full duplex ports. Okay, so we're right near the tail end here. I said this 6 years ago, I'm saying it again today. Atronix is hiring really all positions, software engineers, controls engineers. So if you got and this is more going out to the world than to you folks. But I mean, if you've got an electrical engineering degree, computer science degree, mechanical engineering, and you have some interest in scripting, you know, it really doesn't matter. We're hiring, and we have a lot of positions open. We're expanding rapidly. And yeah, right now we have a 250, 260. That's how many people we have on our Atlanta campus. We added another building across the parking lot, so we're officially on a campus now because we have 2 buildings. So I've been waiting 17 years to call it a campus. Because when I started in 2002, I mean, I walked in the door, and although we had some guys embedded at UPS, there were only 2 people in the office then. It was the co-founder and another engineer, and I was the 3rd guy in the office at that time. And I had just gotten laid off. It was the middle of the dot-com bust. I was just glad to have a job. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know how long it's going to last because there's only a couple of us here. But, you know, maybe I can get 6 months to a year out of it. And here I am 17 years later. But